started.
Welcome back to the committee room, everyone. Looking for a new phrase to restart the live stream if anyone has one. So we are going to finish off our Friday with 3 bill introductions, starting with H107 to hear from Representative Christie about the Hartford TIF district. And that bill is up on our committee page if folks want to pull it up while Representative Christie is telling us about it. Thank you for joining us.
Great. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Coach Christie, representative from Hartford. I'm really proud to introduce this request because historically it started the first year that I entered the legislature. I'll give you a little overview of the Hartford TIF district. Hartford's TIF district approval was effective March 31st, 2011. And it's covering downtown White River Junction and Pine Street and Prospect Street areas. The map is available on your page. I had that sent to you. In the Hartford TIF district, as we retain 75% of the increased state and local tax revenue within the TIF district, since its inception, as we know, referred to as the increment. The town uses its increment to build needed public infrastructure to enable new private sector development. I'm really proud of the work that's being done. I've been a resident of Hartford since 1973, which is scary, in a good way. Well, most of the time, anyways. And I watched it change and grow. Our community is a space that I'm really proud of, and it's been a community effort. The approved TIF district financial plan for public infrastructure is 13 million, plus the financing.
Bless you.
Bless you. Of $1,130,400 of TIF district budget. And it's unobligated and could be used towards unfunded Hartford TIF projects. The town has had 10 years from 2011 approval, to incur the debt and use the TIF increment to pay on that debt. The town, as you know, has 20 years from incurring the first debt to retain the TIF increment. Hartford's first debt was 2014.
What was that year again? 2018?
2014.
First debt.
The first debt. Our legislative extensions have occurred in, as we can all understand, in 2020, when the period to incur by 3 years to 2024 as the result of the pandemic and the recession that we were in at that particular point, which, put, the public-private sector redevelopment projects that were planned to occur in an unstable situation at that time. But for the impact of COVID for the past 3 years, we would have been meeting the 2024 deadline. However, the town is again 2 to 3 years behind the schedule of where we thought we would be in 2020 regarding implementing planned infrastructure projects. And I think we're seeing that around the state and the country, actually. We're all coming out of that dull stream. Similar delays exist with the private sector development, as we've been also hearing, around housing issues. Generate new TIF increment to support new town debt. As I look at that redevelopment area, especially in the Main Street area, the housing that has occurred, and it's all been done, aesthetically, but to see, 4-story housing downtown is pretty cool, And then the old American Legion being repurposed, into additional housing, and then commercial property in the lower level. It's just, I think when we have the town come in, when you get to that point, I'll ask her to bring, some of the pictures, because, it's just incredible to see. And it's part of our overall state growth. We all have our feelings about our own communities, but we are the junction. The trains converged there. The bus system converges there, and then all the interstates converge in our town. You can't get anywhere without kind of, going through or past. So I'm really proud of, our community. I'll do one quick plug if I could. Those of you who have kids, grandkids, or yourself, please go to the link and look at the Aquatic Center in Hartford. It is the largest swimming facility between Boston and Montreal. And we host up to 1,500 people at a time in that facility for regional and statewide events. And then Dartmouth College also uses the facility when they do events as well. But the cool thing is, if you need to do a quick getaway and you can't get to Jay Peak to do that, you can always come to Hartford, because there's adult access and family access to that pool area that's heated. And, it's got all of the kids' stuff. So I just thought I'd throw that out. It's kind of handy, for those of us that might have a need for that access. So in conclusion, the extension of these deadlines does not increase the amount of the increment being retained. It simply recognizes very extenuating circumstances that necessitate a longer period of time to fully implement Hartford's TIF district plan as approved by the state in 2011. So that's the capsulized version of what we've got going on.
Thanks. I'm curious, I know that we extended it once already because of the pandemic, and I'm sort of curious what's been able to happen in that intervening time.
Well, to be very, honest, the town's been going through internal and structural problems with its administration. And I guess the nicest way to put it is that the select board's been transitioning, and in that transition, we hired a town manager. The town manager is no longer, with us. And all of this happened within that period of time. And so the planning division has basically kept this alive, moving in the midst of all of that instability. And, I give a lot of credit to that department and Lori Hirschfield, who directs that department, who will be coming to share the work. And she has the most recent audit information and things of that sort that she can share with the committee so that, we ensure that the regulatory pieces are in place and accurately maintained.
So is Lori Hirschfeld's the best person to come
Yes.
in? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. And can you share her information with Sorsha?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
And what's interesting is, her story, because that always kind of helps me, when you're getting to work with different folks. When she left, she went to college and she studied law and said, don't want to do this, can't be a lawyer. And so she shifted to social work and community planning. And so she's been doing that kind of work ever since. So it's been like a 40-year career, in that. So we're fortunate to have someone like that, coming to the table, at least in our community. And so I'm pretty pleased with that.
Representative Anthony?
Yes.
Thank you. Coach, could you give me a sense, I'm sure when the Hartford planning person comes in, there'd be greater detail, but could you give me a sense as to the magnitude of what gets left on the table if the extension doesn't happen? So I know what it is that I'm choosing. How big, how small, what's undone in just narrative descriptive terms?
It's that final phase of the downtown, redevelopment, I would say. If you recall driving in, to downtown and you remember the Briggs Hotel, everybody knows the Briggs building, and I mean, historically, that piece. And you'll notice that there's a new high-rise that was developed as part of the downtown district. So there's housing and storefronts on the east side of Main Street. And then comes an eatery and more parking. And part of the discussion is the next step and phase of parking and how we address the downtown parking, which is a big, concern since all of that development we've done in the commercial vein and in the Briggs building, as far as big placeholders, is the state's attorney's office. So Windsor County State's Attorney actually is housed in the Briggs building, next door. And then you've got the county courthouse, the newer one, in Railroad Row. And we have space in that Railroad Row confines that would be coming up, as well. And that build out for the train station and also working our way down South Main is all part of what's still left, to complete. But when you go in, you can already see, those anchor points. And then the Cartoon College has probably been one of the primary generators of change in the downtown as well. Because now it's not just recognized, locally, it's internationally recognized.
Okay, thanks. That gives me an idea.
So,
Yeah.
Is the TIF in Hartford or White River Junction?
Hartford is the town.
Okay.
And White River is one of the 5 villages. So White River is the central part of the town of Hartford. And then you've got Wilder,
I see.
Hartford Village, West Hartford, Queechee. And, most of you are familiar with Queechee. That's been an anchor point.
Is the aquatic center within the TIF?
No.
Okay.
No. Actually, when you come down the interstate and you get to the junction of 91, you'll notice the public safety building on the left next to the VA hospital.
Yep.
And the VA hospital is another anchor. And they keep stealing the Vermont VA staff because we do so well. We've lost 3 directors since I've been here from the VA hospital to Denver, Miami, and they moved the other one, I think, to the Connecticut VA because they were doing such a great job. I mean, so they took them.
Is the TIF's your downtown area where the new restaurants have come up and the train station is and all that? Okay, great.
But it all kind of helps in that outbuilding, from, the rest of the community.
It's a lovely downtown. It really has changed a lot in the last decade, even without the full debt. Representative Brannigan?
So are we having significant growth in what would be the grand list value?
Yes.
This area?
Yeah,
All right, and you can prove
yeah.
that with numbers.
Yeah, she'll be able to bring that.
If we extend this, the thing that gets hurt is the ed fund.
Mm.
And the rest of us all have to pick that up. So I want to know that it's going to be worth it when we get done. That there's going to be significant growth there if we stretch it out another, 4 years, is that correct? 5?
No, let's see. What, 2?
2?
It's only 2.
Just 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
On top of 2 that we did last.
So you have the numbers to back that up?
Oh, yeah.
The grand list,
Yes.
how the grand list is growing.
And she'd be able to bring, that data with her. And there's been significant housing with Twin Pines, which is our development construct. And because of the unique nature of the Upper Valley, we provide support to Dartmouth College and, Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center. So things that happen there quickly impact what happens in Hartford as far as development goes. And as that has occurred, and we can make sure to bring the unit count, forward as well. But right now, as you go down Sykes Avenue, where all of the automobile dealerships, are for, interestingly occurring. Gateway Motors used to be the only car dealership, in White River, after Millerado moved to New Hampshire. And now there are 7 major dealerships on that site.
They all moved there within the time of the TIF?
Yeah. And, we also anchor, with the postal office because we are the central post office for the whole state. All mail that traverses Vermont goes there first and moves out.
And that happened within the time of the TIF too?
The expansions.
So we blame Hartford for all our mail problems then, right?
Unfortunately, I have to admit, You know, when I drive by and I see the tractor trailers of equipment sitting that were removed in the last 4 years, I go, ugh, because it used to be a day. You know, everything that we would, you'd send a piece of mail out and you'd know that it would be in anywhere in Vermont in a day.
And I can't imagine we're gonna fix the postal problem.
No.
Okay.
That's another discussion.
It is another discussion, perhaps even for the GovOps Congress. Anyone else have any? I think we'll need to dive in with your town manager and appreciate you sharing her information. So, thank you.
But Lori will be able to bring, and I'll make sure that, she brings the data pieces that we need to move that discussion. My only other comment, as a general comment, to my colleagues, here, is in my, one of the other hats, we just completed our warnings for our school district budget. And part of that discussion with the community was around the CLA. And as we know, with ours going from 93.4 2 years ago to the 77.9 that we're at now, when that number goes down, the rate goes up. So we, even with the support of the yields and all of the other purveying factors that factor into that tax rate, and the income level supports that we provide as the legislature, it appears that, from what I'm hearing from my other school board chairs around the state, is that problem that we're all dealing with collectively around the appraisal, and
I guess I'd offer to you a very nice metaphor that Director Remick from the Office of PBR shared with us, which I've sort of found helpful in these continuing conversations, is that if everyone in the state is experiencing the same CLA levels, one, that means that it's actually working as designed, and we experience something together as a state, but also that because there isn't very much variation from district to district, she described it as sort of a boat. And if we're all moving, if the water level has changed for all of us, we're actually not going to experience impacts from it because we're still on the same level. And so I would encourage you to encourage your fellow school board members to realize that this is all in relationship to other districts. And if we're all experiencing it, we're not going to feel the impacts that I think an individual district that was having that would feel.
Well, that's the rest of the story.
Yeah.
Because that part we do understand. They've been doing that side of the boat for a long time too. And it's all a question of sharing that with our communities, that this is a shared experience. What we're experiencing in Hartford is not unique to just us. It's unique to everyone. So that's that other piece.
And I think that's true for your TIF as well. The TIFs that are still operating right now, I think, are all experiencing some trouble with their debt incurrence because of construction challenges. So,
and that's the big one. In the construction, we did a major renovation of a building that started in 2020 February, and what happened in March. But we were able to complete the construction in the 2021. And it was just fortunate that we were able to finish that project in a timely manner and have it not have any overruns, in the project. But what we also know from other construction projects that were going on in that area, directly in the TIF itself, they were experiencing those variables that we all are, around. But so it, like you said, it wasn't unique, to just us.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you spending this time with us, and we look forward to talking to your town manager.
Great.
Not manager, but
Director of Planning. Okay, thank you.
we don't have a town manager at the
Right.
moment.
Okay, thank you.
They're in that search process.
Yes.
So-
Okay, so your Director of Planning, I'm sure will adequately cover it. Thank you.
She's got it.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us.
And thanks for your time.
And if folks want to refresh the browsers, we have some new information up. Thank you.
See you later.
Bye, Coach.
Next up, we are going to hear about H113 from Representative Sebelia. If you want to join us, thank you so much.
Good morning.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I just sent a copy of my testimony to Sorsha.
Is it helpful for us to be pulling it up?
I mean,
Okay,
probably not.
okay. I will just listen to your words then. Thank you.
Good morning. For the record, Representative Laura Sibilia, independent, representing Dover, Jamaica, Stratton, Somerset, and Wardsboro, here to talk to you about H13, an act relating to the public, pious, or charitable uses property tax exemption. So this bill does two things. It clarifies that churches and other public, pious, or charitable organizations are not eligible for the state property tax exemption if those organizations engage in any lobbying or other political activity on their property. The second thing that it does is churches and nonprofits will also be required under this bill to certify annually to the Vermont Department of Taxes that the organization does not conduct any lobbying or political activity on the property that would disqualify the organization from the exemption. So why is this necessary? This past election, I noticed and began to gather multiple advertisements, letters to the editor, and social media posts being deployed to promote partisan candidate gatherings at churches throughout Vermont. Small churches and large churches, churches in Chittenden County, churches in the Kingdom, churches in Southern Vermont, churches in our largest towns, and churches in rural and small town Vermont. These promotions all had one thing in common. They were promoting partisan or single candidate events. That is not necessarily a problem unless the church has sought and received a state property tax exemption as a public, pious, or charitable nonprofit organization. So we need to remember that all Vermonters of all political persuasions are picking up the property tax payments being exempted by these important community service organizations. There's no room for partisan political activity to be supported in these establishments if these establishments are asking all Vermonters to support their organization. So, excuse me, little sip. There's a bulletin that was helpful from the IRS. Exempt public, pious, or charitable nonprofit organizations can participate in some political activities. And I'll read from this, if that's okay.
You don't have to get permission.
Okay, great. Under the Internal Revenue Code, all Section 501c3 organizations are absolutely prohibited from directly or indirectly participating in or intervening in any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate for elective public office. Contributions to political campaign funds or public statements of position, either verbal or written, made on behalf of the organization in favor of or in opposition to any candidate for public office clearly violate the prohibition against political campaign activity. Violating this prohibition may result in denial or revocation of tax exempt status and the imposition of certain excise taxes. Certain activities or expenditures may not be prohibited, depending on the facts and circumstances. For example, certain voter education activities, including presenting public forums and publishing voter education guides conducted in a nonpartisan manner, do not constitute prohibited political campaign activity. So a candidate forum with all of the candidates would be okay. In addition, other activities intended to encourage people to participate in the electoral process, such as voter registration and get out the vote drives, would not be prohibited political campaign activity if conducted in a nonpartisan manner. On the other hand, voter education or registration activities with evidence of bias that would favor one candidate over another, oppose a candidate in some manner, or have the effect of favoring a candidate or group of candidates would constitute prohibited participation or intervention. Madam Chair, it's my sense that most Vermonters are not deliberately flouting the law and the requirements for the public, pious, or charitable organizations, but they are simply unaware of the federal requirements. So putting these requirements into state law and requiring those benefiting from the tax exemption that all other Vermont property taxpayers are paying for to certify their activities are compliant will help us honor the purpose of this tax exemption. And you've heard this many times, Madam Chair, but I think this is just a little simple change that we could make. And with that, my presentation has concluded and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Representative Bodie.
Thank you very much. So you mentioned on the property, but what about an organization that has a central office and they have scattered properties throughout the state? How would that work?
I think it connects to the tax, where the properties are taxed, not paying property taxes.
So it would have to be right on the property and has nothing to do with the central organization and what they're saying.
Where the buildings are tax exempt is my understanding, but it's Abby that I've been working with.
Right.
And she's done quite a bit of research, actually. I've been talking with her throughout the summer and fall about this, trying to make sure that I understood what the intent was, the federal regulations, and what was missing, if anything, and what we could do that was not over the top in Vermont. Just to help. I mean, I view this as helpful. I don't think Vermonters are intentionally doing this, but it was prolific throughout this legislative electoral election season. So more so than I had ever seen. So
Representative Simmons from Denver.
Yeah, it's just sort of clarifying, like the exemption is based on an individual property, not like an organization receives an exemption for all
Yes.
properties, is that correct? So you
It's-
need to test your activities on the specific parcels that are.
yes, I believe so.
Receive the exemption parcel to parcel.
I believe so. Yes.
So is your, Representative Sibilia, thank you. Is your sense that these organizations that your bill is intended for have just simply forgotten that this is federal law and that you'd use this bill to try to remind them here in Vermont of what the law is?
Yeah, and I believe it's at the municipal level where this tax exemption is determined, whether or not it's going to be granted or not. And, you may have heard me say once or twice about, the very hardworking volunteer Vermonters that are running our towns and may not be experts on the federal law. You know, we've got some historical tax exemptions that have likely been granted. And people just don't understand that this is happening. We've also seen it really a deterioration of community and people looking for places to gather and have community. And I think, you know, whether you're practicing in any religion or not, I mean, we certainly have used these spaces for, I certainly have attended many gatherings in churches for community type events. And so this is really helping to clarify that they are to be nonpartisan. Did I answer your question?
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Taylor, I'm back.
So the church that I go to has a separate room that they rent out to the community for any purposes they want. So my understanding is that they would not be able to say the Colchester Republicans can meet there just as a regular meeting or
So if that building is tax exempt,
Yep.
not paying the property taxes, and the rest of us are paying for that,
Yep.
yes, it would not be partisan activity that would be allowed there. And so if it's tax exempt and then they're renting it, so we're all paying for it, they're making money off of it and it's partisan, that's exciting.
And also in the church, in a separate church, we used to hold elections in the church.
Oh, interesting.
In the church
Well, that
basement.
seems nonpartisan though.
It is nonpartisan.
Is it-
Yeah,
It is nonpartisan then?
well, it's
Okay.
everyone, right? It's
It is
everyone.
everyone. I'm thinking of
Yes.
people standing outside, people parking trucks with signs on them.
At other
things like
town
that.
halls, yeah.
But those would be on church property. See, I'm trying to draw the distinction between the church taking a position and the church making something available for somebody else to take a position. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're saying that the law says that they cannot even provide the space for somebody else to take a position.
I
It's
think,
not just that they don't take it.
yeah, no, I think the obligation is on whoever is receiving the tax exemption, which would be the church.
Okay.
Representative Beck, did you?
Yeah, I'm just focused on the lobbying, not the political activity, but I've never been a registered lobbyist, but my understanding is that Vermont has a very wide definition of what lobbying qualifies as lobbying. And that we have a lot of lobbyists in our state, and I understand that a lot of our people that work in our nonprofits, especially our directors, are lobbyists. So would this mean like if I have tons of nonprofits in my community and they're looking for money, statute change, contracts with the state, that if they're making phone calls or writing emails from their center or inviting legislators to come to their center to visit to see what they do, that would seem like that they would lose their tax exempt.
I think we could have someone in to get clearer into the difference because there is a difference between lobbying and public information. And most of our nonprofits that share information with us as legislators in order to promote their interests is actually generally considered sort of informational purposes and not technically lobbying. And so we could dive into that a little bit if we need.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
There's lobbying that goes on they're looking for stuff for their agency.
May I respond to that, Madam?
Absolutely.
So I actually work for a nonprofit and help manage another nonprofit. One of them is a 501c3, which is what we're talking about here, which are prohibited from lobbying activity. One of them is a 501c6, which is a type of nonprofit organization that is established that can lobby. And there's specific purposes for that. I should have gathered that information and brought that to you, but I think it's important. So there are distinctions amongst the different nonprofits. And so helping Vermonters understand those distinctions, I think is, it's time to do that.
Yeah, Representative Sims.
And again, we should get someone to provide us with that legal definition. I think my understanding is like it's not 100%, like you can't that there's some small amount of time that you can lobby. It's like, it just can't be like the primary duty, but someone can help us.
We can help.
But I think I remember that there's some small allowance within a 501c3 for lobbying activities. It's just very small, and it can't be the core of what you do.
I think it's a really interesting question about, for me, it was one of the biggest realizations when I got to the legislature that like, no one pays any attention to what we do and we pass laws that then no one knows about for the most part. And especially in a small state with a fairly limited administrative apparatus, I think it's really, really hard for folks to know what the law is.
Yeah.
And, a lot of notice requirements, especially in in labor law, we look at notice requirements, like no one actually ever reads that thing in the break room wall unless like they're, very bored one day. So I think it's a really interesting thing to think about how we actually make sure people understand the law well enough to be compliant with it, even federal law. So thank you for bringing this to us. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I hope you will consider taking it up, Madam Chair. I do think it was pretty prolific this year and really kind of calling out for some help to just clarify. So thank you, everybody, for your time this morning.
And full disclosure, I also noticed it this fall and was in touch with the Secretary of State's office and the tax department to say like, what is going on? Can you do something about it? And they both said, no, we really can't with the way things are currently structured, even though we agree that they should be doing this.
Right.
Yeah. So thank you for bringing this to us.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
And last but certainly not least on our agenda today is Representative Meslin, if you would like to join us in the witness chair.
Down here? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, let's see.
Sit down, before you get started, let's not jump ahead.
Representative Jim Maslin.
Thank you.
Two other towns. And as we discussed yesterday,
We're talking about H120, which is up on our committee page, folks.
this committee has discussed removing the exemption, is what it is, for the sales tax on the cloud tax a number of times. As some members have been here a while or tracked this, we had sales tax on some. Back up a little bit. As we've discussed, cloud can be taxed at three different levels. As a software, as a service, as a infrastructure, I guess is what it is. And when we first kicked this around in the legislature during the Shumlin administration, we enacted a sales tax on pre-written software in its simplest form. The industry hadn't evolved to the point where we were distinguishing between software, product, service, infrastructure, And we had that sales tax and it was pretty much scuttled by the tax department during the Shumlin administration. They just didn't want to do it. There was heavy lobbying, I guess we could say, from software developers. I think you used the term yesterday, Peter, infant industry or something like that. Oh my God, this is going to kill us. But as we know from Chris Roop, I think, and others, Abby, the industry is growing by leaps and bounds, and it's a shame that we don't apply our sales tax to software, pre-written software, in the same manner as we do to other products. And so the bill, as the committee may kick around and whatever committees typically do with bills when they're introduced, basically goes back to where we were when the exemption was put in place prior to that, so that we'd simply be taxing pre-written software and all its various forms. And the language that Abby drafted is, I believe, the same language that we had in a bill towards the end of the biennium, didn't survive the process through the Senate. And I'm a firm believer that it's high time we just paid attention to what's really out there in the industry and with regards to our revenues of the state and said, okay, come on. Let's quit pussyfooting around this and let's just go ahead and tax it. And it's as simple as that. And we've already heard from a number of witnesses. There are certainly more available. There will be software developers from various parts of the state will come in and plead that it's, as Peter said, still, Representative Anthony said, it's still a fledgling infant industry and we should cut them some slack. But times are changing. As we all know, our economy in its many respects and aspects is evolving as we speak, week by week, month by month. So that's the bill, Madam Chair, and members of the committee, and I hope you promptly put it in the miscellaneous tax bill and we get on with the business.
Thank you, Representative Maslin. I appreciate
I'll
it.
go back around, or I can sit here.
Does anyone have any,
Comfortable, you know?
is it? It's a nice view, right?
It's okay, it's fine, I can see y'all.
Yes, Representative Timmer.
Representative Maslin, how are you today?
I'm fine, sir.
Say not so bad yet.
Not so bad yet. That's what I frequently say. People are taking an interest in that. It came from a former employee who used to say that, and I think it's kind of a fine way to answer that question. But anyway, yes.
This would be for capital S, small a, capital S, P, capital P, small a, capital S, right? Platform as service.
Yeah.
Infrastructure as service, or capital I, small a, capital S, right? All three
That is correct.
I just want everyone to know he is looking at a presentation that he's reading that off of.
Yeah, right. As we all had. Okay. One of the reasons to tax cloud in all its aspects, pre-written in all its aspects, is it's increasingly difficult sometimes to tell one from the other. And so the most honest and straightforward thing to do is to just try not to distinguish between one thing and another. We always get tangled up in one way or another, right? If we do that. And so it's easiest just to be straightforward about it, and it's not gonna hurt anybody, and there's good revenue there that the state could use to our advantage without hurting the industry a bit, I don't believe. They'll complain, but I don't recall if we had the statistic in front of us yesterday that more and more states are going in this route. So we're not gonna be an outlier in any aspect, in any respect. We should just get on with it, I think. And I fully expect that software in any aspect, and even if we come up with a fourth category, will evolve and flourish without any help or hindrance from us. So there you have it, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
Thank you.
And well, and as we know, we collect things in this committee that end up in a miscellaneous tax bill as we move through the session. And so maybe it ends up at this tax, and that would be fine.
And I think because the proceeds would go into the ed fund, it might also make sense to be hanging out in an education. We can see as we go.
Aside from the actual presentation of this bill, we have done things over the past couple of years to stabilize the education fund by specifically putting sales tax revenue in. We did that, 3 years ago or something like that. And I've become aware just in the last couple of days that some of the categories that we now have as part of the ed fund have either grown or shrunk. And we might, as we work forward with this, decide where this should it go just to the general fund or to some specific fancy thing like the education fund. As we heard yesterday, purchase and use tax on automobiles is growing. Who knew, but it is quite a bit. And other taxes are shrinking a little bit. So there are multiple purposes to which we could put this category of taxation, and I look forward to that discussion too.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of all the points in using software where money is exchanging hands. Like when you order a subscription to Netflix, that's one of them. When you buy when you go to a store and buy a DVD of software, those are kind of covered by this. What happens when now there are games in which you purchase swords or shields or things like this, so that you're actually exchanging money for those pieces of whatever they are.
Yeah.
Is that something that would also get hit by this, or where are we?
I actually remember last year having a conversation about that exact thing and learning that when you buy those tokens, that's actually, I think, considered like buying money, and it's supposed to be taxed in a different way, and and it is actually supposed to be taxed in a different way. But I don't remember the exact details.
It's the pre-written software that's being taxed. It's the program that enables you to buy swords or shields or whatever. The shorter shield is maybe a more of a concrete merchandise.
Yeah, but that's free. The software is free.
But if suppose I invent a company, that influences legislators. And in order to do that, I need a software program that's developed. And it's available in other states. It's not specific just to Vermont. So it's not individualized. This is for any legislator in any state or any lobbyist who wants to be able to track bills. And there's a program that's developed, pre-written. It's available to Julia in her state or Carl in your state, wherever they are. And the program is pre-written, so you can purchase it. The program sold to anyone in any aspect that's taxed. It's the pre-written software. It's not the sword and the shield and the orb and anchor, that kind of stuff like that.
But it's also the use of the pre-written software that's taxed, even if you don't actually own the pre-written software.
If it's stored in the cloud, this is software as a service. It's pre-written, and you use it. Then you log in and you purchase it for a period of time. You are accessing pre-written service as a surface, or maybe it's on a platform. Representative Brannigan's platform that they hide away in their sugar house or some kind of thing like that. That's where the hub is. That's probably not the best example, but you get it. But anyway, it's as a surface, as a platform, and it's the aspect that it's pre-written software, which previously you could go to Staples, you could buy it on a disc. It was pre-written, right?
Yeah, I understand those. I'm trying to think of other possibilities where money exchanges hands that maybe it wouldn't get taxed then. Okay.
And I will freely admit that the people from JFO can walk us through this more adeptly than I can.
Okay.
So take their word, not mine, but I'll work through with the committee to the extent I can be helpful, which is the object of the exercise this morning.
Thank you very much for taking us through this.
Okay,
Yeah.
but thank you for your time.
We are done for the day. Would encourage everyone to join us at noon in the House chamber, because the more we can all talk to our colleagues about education finance, the better off we all are, and our constituents throughout the entire state are. So thanks for that. And we'll be back in this room